Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth part of this tutorial series, and in this one I'll be showing you an alternative for the generic block provider we created from the previous video. So in this video I won't be talking about the RxDart library which I made mention of from the previous video. Instead I'll be showing you another way you could actually share your blocks around your application without using this block provider class. So today I'm going to be showing you another alternative. I'm not trying to say that this one is the better one, so you just do your research and choose whichever one works for you. So in today's video we'll be using something called we'll be using a package called the Get It package, which is just a service locator. So before I head over to this before I start making use of this package, there's something I want us to take note of. The reason why we created this block provider was simply because we did not want to pass down the blocks through the custom app bar down to the search box. So we used the design pattern called dependency injection. So with dependency injection, we did something called decoupling. So what decoupling simply means is to reduce connection or connection between components. So previously we had a very tightly coupled widget tree whereby this custom map bar was coupled with the block property was integrated with the MovieSearch widget and also the search box over here. Remember from the previous video, I think we had the block property inside the search box class. So we wanted to reduce coupling with the process called decoupling. So we removed the implementation of that block inside this class and used the design pattern called dependency injection to inject it into the search box. So now this search box class doesn't know much about the implementation details, the instantiation of that particular block class. Instead, we just injected it here. So that process is called decoupling, where you just remove too much dependencies from one class or from one object to another object. So in this video, we're going to be using something else. So the previous one, we used the provider. We implemented dependency injection using the provider, and in this video we are going to be using another design pattern called the service locator design pattern. So from this simple stuff I'm saying here, dependency injection means to give while service locator means to take. So what that simply means, I could just show you an example and just have this phrase in mind, to give. If we come over here to our MovieSearch app, from the name provider, when you hear the word provider, you're actually like giving something, right? You are providing objects, you are providing information to a particular class. So with the provider, with the dependency injection pattern, we gave the objects to the corresponding classes. So over here, we provided what's the MovieSearchBloc, and we made use of it inside this custom app bar. So over here, you can see here, the block provider provides, it gives this particular MovieSearchBloc to this variable. But for service locator, it's the other way around. It means to take. So when I implement it, you see what I actually mean. So for this video, I won't be diving deep into this design pattern, but for this video, we'll be using something called the Get It package over here, which is just a service locator package to help you share classes in your Flutter application. Not just Flutter, you could use it in your Dart code. So let's get to it. So at the end of this video, we'll remove all the whole references to providers, and our code will still work like it did. So I'll create a new file here, and as we progress, I'll explain. I'll call it service service locator dot dat. So I'll be using a design pattern called singleton. But from the previous video in our, where is that? In the block folder. In our MovieSearchBloc, in the previous video, I showed you something whereby we could just create something like this: movie search equals to movie. So I said we could create something like this, and this, okay, final. So we will have one instance of this MovieSearchBloc in our application. And I told you that instead of creating providers, you could share this variable around your application. You could just import it in the file you want to use, and everything will work, would work correctly. And I made mention of having your main widget to be a stateful widget, so you'd call the dispose method and dispose it whenever your application closes. So one disadvantage of doing it this way, using this type of singleton, is that it's going to be hard for you to test this because only one instance of this class is going to be existing in your application. So testing would not be so straightforward because mocking this type of stuff would not be really straightforward and easy. So that's why we're using this getIt package. It has some additional methods that could help you reset your mocks, and you could easily mock it because it's an object. So the documentation and this corresponding article, I'll link the article. I'll put the link to this article in the description, or you could get it from the package page. So let's dive in to this. Let me close all this. Okay, so I'll create a service locator, and to create that service locator, it's in the latest version of this getting plugin, the service locator is a singleton. So singleton simply means one instance. So I could give it any name. I could give it service locator, but I could just easily name it SL, which simply means service locator. So it's a singleton, and this is how we call it. So we create an instance. If you watch or you read tutorials on this getting package, they would have to create something like new getIt and create a constructor. But in this latest version of the package, it's just a singleton. So you're just having one instance of this getIt package in your application. So yeah, this is the corresponding article. So let's continue. So for this, I'm going to create a very simple setup locators here. So this function, as soon as I create it, is going to be called as soon as our application starts. So I'm going to use something called register singleton, and I'm going to be passing in MovieSearchBloc. I'm going to be passing in MovieSearchBloc, and this is also generic, so I'll be able to pass this to. Cool. So what this does is that it's going to create one instance of this service locator for our application. So whenever you call this instance, you can be able to return the corresponding object or class you've passed to it. So as we get this working, you'd see how all this falls in place. So over here, I'm going to be updating my main method. So what this simply is going to do is whenever my application starts, or before my application starts, I'm going to register this singleton. So I'm going to take this guy up and set up service locators. Cool. So I'm going to be calling it before I mount my application. So this is going to set up the whole service locator in our application. What that simply means is that it's going to activate this variable, so we can be able to access the instance of this variable from wherever in our app, from whichever place in our application. And remember what I told you guys about singleton, it just exists one place, only one instance. So whenever I'm calling SL, I'm referring to this single instance here, so it can get me the corresponding object. So the next thing to do would be to head over to this MovieSearch page, and I'm going to be removing this block provider since we would not be using it. So I'm going to replace widgets with children. And over here, what I'll be doing would be to come here and remove this and say sl.get. So I'm going to import the corresponding service locator sl.get. Then I'm going to be passing in the, I think it's generic. Is it? Yeah, okay, it is. So I'm going to be passing in the MovieSearchBloc over here. So I'll still come back to this screen to show you what we're actually doing. So service. So I'm now calling this instance over here, the instance we created in our service locator. So I'm trying to do what I want to get. What do I want to get? I want to get the MovieSearchBloc object that we registered over here. Can you see? Register singleton of type what? MovieSearchBloc. When I call you, what should you return? You should return this particular instance. So it's going to just be only one instance of this MovieSearchBloc it's going to be returning. So we won't have duplicate copies. So that's the whole concept of singletons. So I'm over here. I'm now saying sl.get. What do I want to get? The MovieSearchBloc. So first things first, I'm going to be removing the provider to show you that if this works, it means we are no longer relying on the provider package. Then the next place I'm going to be going to would be the custom app bar. And I'll head straight down to the search box. So I'm going to be removing this, and I'm going to be calling what? sl.get SL, which means service locator, which is kind of like a taker, something that takes something that gets an object. So I'll still come back and explain that, but let's ride on. So what do I want to get over here? I want to get the MovieSearchBloc. So when I save this, let me just do a hot restart. I'll do a hot restart. Okay, so I'll head over to the MovieSearch screen. Why are you wasting time? So let me also remove this, although it doesn't matter. Let me remove the block provider to just show you guys we are no longer depending on it in this class. Cool. So over here, I'm going to come and search for inception. Why are you wasting my time? Okay, cool. So we have inception over here, and you can see our code still works as it did previously. So just a quick recap before I come into this code. The main reason why we created a provider in the previous video was to do what? To decouple, to implement something called decoupling, which means just to make your components or your widgets not to depend on other classes directly. So previously, custom app bar was depending on what? On the block property. So we decouple, we remove that thing because custom app bar does not make use of that particular block property. And also the search box over here, we had the property of block inside here, and we had to create a constructor for it. So with the process of decoupling, we did what? We removed that implementation and delegated it to something called a provider. So the whole idea of that stuff I did in the previous video was just to decouple dependencies in our application. So from the previous video, we did something, we applied a design pattern called dependency injection, which, although I've removed the code, but which with the BLoC provider, we could do what? The BLoC provider could give the dependency, and the dependency it gave to this search box class was what? The BLoC dependency. So that was what it did here. Then for this video, we did something called, we made use of a design pattern called the service locator design pattern. And an analogy to understand this would be just simply that when you're making use of a service pattern, you are doing what? You are taking from where? The service locator. You are taking from the service objects over here. So you can see here, we said here, service locator.get. That means you are taking what? What do I want to get from this singleton? I want to get what? The MovieSearchBloc. And you can see here, it provides it. And if you look up our widget 3, we did not have any ugly BLoC provider over here. We just take whenever we want. So over here, I'm taking what? The search block from what? The service locator. And if you come back here, you can see this service locator method function over here. So that is simply what's that's just another approach of actually doing decoupling dependencies in your application. So one other thing I'll just point here is just to note that there's another method over here called, okay, let me just duplicate it. Register singleton. Yeah, so the second one is kind of like lazy instantiation, because currently now whenever our app loads, it's going to do what? Set up all the whole service locators. That, although it's going to be fast, but if you just want to increase performance, because it might take time sometimes, so if you just want to only instantiate, or you want to just create the corresponding locators only when they are needed, you do what? You make use of lazy instantiation, like you're creating a lazy singleton. So that means that, because currently now, the previous way we had, whenever our application starts, it automatically loads up the MovieSearchBloc instance. But with this lazy one, it is not going to load it up until we do what? Until we visit the place that it is being used. So until we visit the movie search screen, then it would now register the service. It will now register the singleton for us. So to make use of this register lazy singleton, it requires a callback, and it's pretty trivial, because if it's not going to be running immediately, you would have kind of like a callback. So whenever it sees that you're making use of it in your application, it does what? Calls this function. So this is how you make use of the lazy registration. Why are you not going out? Okay, cool. So if you do a hot restart, it should still work as usual. So that's just another approach for actually sharing your BLoC across your application without using providers. So I'm just trying to show you guys multiple ways to achieve the same thing. Previously, we created a provider, and that was us implementing or using the dependency injection design pattern. And in this video, we are using something called a service locator. So I did a hot restart, right? I did a hot restart. So that's just basically it for this video. So we don't have the BLoC provider over here. Some people are actually against this whole idea of service locator. They call it an anti-pattern and all, but I just provided it for you in this video. If this one is better for you, use it and also do your research. And as a practice section, I would also want you guys to convert this friend list screen to make use of this service locator instead of having the BLoC provider over here. So let me check why this stuff is not reloading. Okay, it's reloading. So that'll be it for this video. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking about the RxDart library. So I'll see you in the next one.